or urgent. In the Middle East, Iran has vowed to retaliate after the United States seized an Iranian cargo ship amid the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian government called the action an act of armed piracy and turned the episode into yet another sign that the truce is hanging by a thread. On this April 20, 2026, what seemed like an opening for new talks has once again turned into a scene of confrontation, threats, and direct pressure on Tehran. What happened was straightforward. The United States said that a destroyer intercepted the Iranian ship Tosca after claiming that the vessel tried to break the naval blockade imposed on Iran's ports. According to the Associated Press, there were repeated warnings for 6 hours. After that, the ship was hit in the engine room, lost its ability to continue the journey, and ended up being boarded by American soldiers. Who is at the center of this new clash? On one side, the Trump administration, the United States Central Command, and the soldiers carrying out the blockade. On the other side, the Iranian Joint Military Command, President Masoud Pezeshkian, and Iranian diplomacy, which now accuses Washington of sabotaging any real chance for dialogue. The name of the ship has come to symbolize this new phase. It's no longer just about verbal threats, but about physical action, with seizures at sea and military messages. When and where this happened also explains the magnitude of the crisis. The seizure happened on Sunday in the Gulf of Oman region, connected to the Strait of Hormuz, a vital route for the world's oil, and that's exactly where the most serious point lies. Because the United States has maintained a blockade on Iranian ports since last week, while Iran has once again started to restrict navigation in the region. Washington claims that the cargo ship tried to break through this barrier. Tehran responds by saying that the ship was coming from China and that the approach was illegal. Iranian rhetoric escalated immediately, but the central fact is another. The blockade stopped being a threat and became a concrete operation with interception, gunfire, and taking control of the vessel. Why does this matter so much? Because Hormuz normally accounts for about a fifth of global oil trade, as well as gas, fertilizers, and strategic cargo. Reuters reported that on Monday, traffic in the strait was practically paralyzed, with only 3 crossings in 12 hours. In other words, the tension is no longer just in the rhetoric. It is already blocking routes, scaring insurers, making freight more expensive, and increasing fear. The market got the message. At the same time, Reuters reported that the price of Brent crude oil rose by 4.8%. This happened because investors began to fear the collapse of the ceasefire and a new phase of attacks, retaliation, and blockades. At the same time, diplomacy entered a gray area. There was an expectation of a new round of talks in Pakistan, with security preparations in Islamabad and the advance arrival of American teams. Iran began to signal that it does not intend to participate for now. The truce, which expires by Wednesday, is once again being treated as fragile and uncertain. In practice, the seizure of the ship pushed the negotiations back. There is also a detail that increases international pressure. China expressed concern about the interception and called for restraint, as well as the resumption of normal transit through the strait. This carries weight because, according to Reuters, Beijing is the main buyer of Iranian oil. The Iranian rhetoric tries to project strength by calling the operation armed piracy. But what we see right now is a regime cornered by increasingly real pressure at sea, in the economy, and at the negotiating table. Iran threatens to retaliate because it knows that if this kind of seizure happens again, its ability to export, finance its state machinery, and maintain control over the crisis will become even more limited. The promised retaliation, therefore, does not come from a stable environment. It arises within an escalation that exposes nervousness, wear and tear, and loss of ground. The overall situation is serious. What began as the seizure of a cargo ship could now open an even more dangerous phase in the Gulf. Iran promises to retaliate, the United States maintains the pressure, and the Strait of Hormuz remains at the center of a dispute that affects energy, trade, and military power. This is a concrete action at sea, with an immediate impact on the region's climate and the international market. The question now is how Tehran will react. And that answer matters because any new attack, interception, or any attempt to break the blockade could push the crisis to another level. Iran uses the term armed piracy to try to turn the episode into a political cause. But the fact is that the seizure exposed weakness, increased pressure, and showed that the confrontation has entered a tougher phase.